Could you say more about the ivermectin thing that you're not happy with? What are you not happy with about it?
I don't like the way the bed is structured. I think ivermectin is interesting. I think that so I'm vaccinated. And I don't think I knew about ivermectin before I got vaccinated. But I don't trust Johnson & Johnson, who I chose to be my vaccine provider. I trusted the older technology of not using mRNA, not because I think that mRNA technology won't work in the long run. I think it will replace the technology I chose, but it was new and fresh, and new, fresh things often have unforeseen consequences. So my feeling is that I chose an inferior technology because it was too new. I chose to get a vaccine from a company I don't trust. I chose to follow the recommendations of people inside of the mainstream who I despise. I don't think the average person can do such a thing. I think the cognitive dissonance of saying, I don't trust you, I know you're lying, I know you're perversely incentivized, I know that this is running risks, I know that you're claiming that it's safer than the thing that I took. And I still think it was the right thing to do. It's not a Schelling point where people can collect. They tend to collect either at, for God's sakes, those people who don't listen are quacks. Listen to the recommendation people. The CDC and the Surgeon General are singing from the same hymnal. There's that Schelling point. And there's the Schelling point. Man, you can't trust these guys because they're in bed with each other and they're corrupt. Okay? These are the reflexive positions that you talk to about, the reflexive contrarian position, the reflexive sort of establishment position. Waking up every day and trying to do your own sense-making is exhausting, and it's not viable for the world. We need institutions to do this. People claim, I was just talking to Sam Harris 2 nights ago. He said, well, you're anti-institutional. It's like, no, I'm anti the group of people who inhabits the institutions. Why do you think I'm wearing a jacket in sweltering heat? I am the institution class. I'm just in exile. It's like hating Vichy France is not the same thing as hating France. I love France, so I hate Vichy France. This is too confusing for people. People need simpler stories, and we need a Schelling point where people can collect that makes sense. There is none available, and that's the key issue. Now, with ivermectin, my feeling about it is there's not enough data. The data that's there may have its own problems. The studies may be too small, come under question, don't know. I don't understand the pathways. I've tried to understand the pathways that are claimed. I'm not in this field, so you wouldn't expect that I would just have an easy time walking in and understanding it. I personally, the way I read the whole thing is I think the vaccines are riskier than they're claimed. And I think that vaccines in general are riskier than are claimed by their proponents. I think that the claim that vaccines are safe is vaccines are safe is the 3-line thing that you do when you're really trying to say something like, vaccines aren't perfectly safe. They do have negative side effects. Maybe they have far more than we've ever thought, but that on balance, vaccines for a population are safe and we have to spread the risk. So you're taking a risk and we expect you to do it just the way we expect you to be conscribed into an army when there's a war. It's not very comfortable. But we don't have a culture of adult communication to the public. So we say things like vaccines are safe, no lockdowns anymore, vax it or mask it. It's basically sing-song rhymes from kindergarten. And the way I always took it is those were the lies. The real truth is we expect you to bear the risk. We recognize that we're perversely incentive. It's still, on balance, fairly safe. The cost of the illness, particularly in terms of morbidity, not just mortality. And we always focus on mortality, and we somehow don't focus on negative long-term side effects, has, on balance, been in favor of the vaccines. And what I don't want to do is I'm not in a position of leadership, David. I'm out here, you're in my dining room right now.
Sure, but you are someone who some people look to for understanding, and you have some influence.
Well, this is the really uncomfortable part. I don't think Brett really understands that he's a celebrity. And I don't think I understand that I'm a celebrity. It's a weird thing to say, you know. You're like an academic. You're 55 years old in my case. Brett's over 50 now. What are we? You know, I tell myself a story that I go down the Sunset Strip and people say, "Hey, Eric, great job," out of a car or something. And I say, well, I'm a mathematician, you know, and then it's harder for me to say I'm an entertainer. I'm a podcaster. I'm an influencer. So somebody offered to send me their clothing so I'd wear it on Instagram. It's very funny. I don't think that there's an acceptance of this because in part saying I am a celebrity feels like saying I'm a douchebag, you know? And then understanding the ways in which a celebrity can influence, or the idea that people are turning to you to outsource their thinking. Your message may be, I'm trying to teach you to fish the way I fish. And their point is, keep showing us how to fish by pulling fish out and then we can eat more. And you're like, oh, shit, really? So, yeah, none of us know how to do this, and we're fumbling. But in general, my feeling is that the mainstream is angry because it's trying to say you're fumbling the wrong way. You're having your thoughts out loud on large channels when we have a public health campaign that you're interfering with. And the feeling is you have a bad public health campaign that's misconfigured. You have anti-leaders in leadership positions. So people are going to think for themselves. You have a new technology, the internet, which is meeting it. You know, I had Hong Kong flu in the late 60s. There was no internet. And by the way, you know, Woodstock was held in the middle of the, you know, Hong Kong flu. We don't understand where we are. We have no concept of what we're doing. We're figuring it out in real time. And the biggest problem that we're having is there are two strategies. One strategy is let's get everybody singing from the same hymnal as if the internet hadn't been invented. Let's imagine that the journalists had the higher reputation they did after, let's say, Watergate, when they went after institutions and the powerful as opposed to protecting the powerful. Let's imagine that we were doing this in a totally different context. Everybody who's contradicting that doesn't realize that they're getting in the way of the war effort, the war on the virus. We say there's no war effort. You guys are a bunch of losers and clowns. What the fuck are you doing? I don't see a Churchill or a Patton or a MacArthur. I don't see anyone of competency. I don't see a Montgomery. So what, the rest of us have pitchforks and knives and Swiss Army, you know, blades, and we're supposed to defend against an invading Panzer division? I don't know. How are we supposed to be doing this, Dave? So Brett is thinking out loud, and he's doing things that are interesting, and he doesn't understand, in part, what happened. Well, what happened was war and pandemic are two places where everything changes. This leaves none of us any options, David. This is the big problem, which is, what am I supposed to do in the face of Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Anthony Fauci? I don't know. Brett is thinking out loud. He's thinking out loud in a room so quiet you could hear a pin drop.
You mentioned that you've spoken to Sam Harris before. Obviously, Sam put out that podcast that was very critical of Brett recently. What did you make of that?
Well, I think Sam kept his sword mostly in its sheath. I think that Sam and I both maintain different versions of a principle. I'm more radical than he is. I believe that there is a lot of residual wisdom in a corrupt system. I believe that our institutions are degrading. They are greatly degraded. I cannot stand the leadership class. But I believe that all of those things, like all the things that are in place in a hospital to make sure they don't cut off the wrong leg if you're having an amputation or something, these things are part of the wisdom. They were put there in part by people who are now dead, where nobody remembers why they're there. So I think Sam has an instinctual feeling that the system works. We know that the vaccines are fairly safe. We know that the virus is fairly dangerous. My guess is that Brett is particularly motivated by a subset of issues. Why are we not talking about the long-term safety of the vaccines as opposed to the short term, only the short term?
I think the point that you made earlier about the narrative around the vaccines is interesting, because my sense is that you get, I know it's a loaded term, but conspiracy theories more generally tend to grow in the gaps in the official narrative. So I think the vaccine narrative is a really good example, because it's a simplification to say vaccines are entirely safe, whereas a true story might be to say vaccines are a medical intervention. All medical interventions have a benefit and cost ratio. Our judgment is that the benefit ratio versus the cost for vaccines is extremely good. And the problem is that because a simplistic narrative is offered, you incentivize and you get these conspiracy narratives thriving in the gaps.
That's exactly right. So this is why I'm not a reflexive. I can't stand the people who put a minus sign in front of whatever the man says and says, well, I think for myself, because there's nothing less individualistic. Now, the hardest thing is to say, I'm going to go with the people who are lying to me, which is what I did. And I'm trying to show leadership. I'm trying to say, and I did this at the beginning of the pandemic, which is you sit down and you say, okay, this is going to suck. You can ask us when this is going to be over. The short answer is we don't know. 2 weeks to flatten the curve? I never understood that. Never made any sense to me. And the reason it made no sense is because, to me, it was nonsensical. Herd immunity. We speak like we speak like people with cognitive defects. We talk in such simplistic terms that can't possibly support the weight of the conversation. The key point is we expect you to get vaccinated. We expect you to get vaccinated at risk to yourself and your family. We expect you to take something that we cooked up and break your skin's barrier and have it course through your body, even though you can't understand how it works. That is a profound ask. It is similar to saying, we expect your sons to go to war when we say it's time to go to war. That does not ring in modern ears. We don't understand wait, why do you get my son? It's my son. You're some sort of distant thing. This is why government is a profound responsibility. And I think that people think it's a profit opportunity. That, you do it for a few years and then you get the sweet consulting gigs and the speaking arrangements afterwards. I can't get past it, David. I can't get past the idea that somehow the lessons of the 20th century appear to have been learned by absolutely no one.
And we're just about to wrap up. Is there anything that we missed that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think that the issue about the ivermectin is that it's there's something interesting to investigate. And the right way to think about this, in my opinion, is to say that you're running the opportunity cost of being exposed to increased damage from COVID, should you get it, while you were waiting for something else to occur. The morbidity associated, if you happen to be in the population of people who get long COVID with all of these bad symptoms, and I'm worried about long-term cognitive impairment, long-term respiratory impairment with significant histological damage to your lung tissue. There are concerns about the vaccines. It's not wrong to be concerned about vaccines. I want to reach the people who are aware that public health is not getting it done. And what I would say differently from Brett is you're not crazy for fear that vaccines aren't as safe as claimed. You're not crazy for thinking that the public health people are lying to you and have lied to you. You are obligated to think about whether or not this is so bad that you want to forego the vaccines in order to do something where there isn't a tremendous amount of data or a tremendous amount of understanding, where the experts who are alternative experts may have things that they are choosing to do which show that they may be noble, they may be courageous, but they may also be self-interested. You have to take on the full responsibility of what you're doing. And if you've never heard somebody say, I'm going with the people I don't trust over the people I do, that's how crazy where we are is. Now, you can disagree with me. You can say, Eric, you should have understood ivermectin. Let's imagine ivermectin comes and wins the day. Let's imagine that ivermectin is as good as anyone has said it is, if not better. It will still have been badly structured ex ante as an argument, the way it has been. And I want to put a post-it note here. If it turns out that that's true, it reminds me in part of the father who says, our family's in terrible financial trouble, but I've met a man who said that he will pay $10 million for us to have one round of Russian roulette where we spin a 6-chambered revolver and have our youngest child put it in his head and pull the trigger. And if he wins, we get $10 million. Okay, so now you actually go through it and you pull the trigger and there is no bullet in the chamber and the family's $10 million richer. All of their problems have gone away. Was that father correct by recognizing that there was an opportunity, if everything ex post works out? I don't think so. The right thing to do is believe in your institutions, do not believe in their leadership. That causes you a problem because the institutions are going to do bad things. There's a lot of wisdom that is resident in the rules, in the culture, in the fact that people who see patients all day long, pick up clinical knowledge. There's a lot of groupthink. It's not one way. The establishment is the establishment because they are the worst, they are the best, they are trustworthy, not trustworthy. You're in a very difficult, complicated landscape. If you're coming to conclusions of it's all the market, man, or they're just trying to get us to put microchips in our, you're probably wrong. I'm concerned that there are behind-the-scenes narratives. I am concerned that this doesn't make any sense. Do I have fears that we're going to discover that there was some terrible thing that was afoot? I don't know. Yeah, it's possible. Right now, I don't know what to tell anybody, and I keep saying that over and over again. You're in a world in which you can't trust the leadership of the institutions. You're going to have to make it a go of it. Please, if you've never heard a voice say this, I want to speak to you. I don't trust these people either. I want Anthony Fauci out of his chair yesterday. I can't stand to listen to him. I can't stand that the Surgeon General lied to me under Trump. I can't stand that Nancy Pelosi wanted me to go and put myself in danger in order that we didn't hurt businesses on Chinese Lunar New Year. I still took the vaccine. I don't think it's completely safe. I do think that ivermectin is hopeful. It is not illogical to try to find a new Schelling point. Am I correct? I don't know. I'm just telling you, ex ante, I like my position more than Brett's. Ex post, Brett's position may carry the day, but I will certainly not be bowing down to it as if it was the world's greatest prediction. I can assure you that he has the best of intentions and that this isn't simply some sort of a power grab. And I can assure you that people like me and Sam Harris behind the scenes, we are all trying to talk. We're trying to do the sense making. And in particular, there will be a Patreon. You will be able to contribute to me. I will come back with new episodes. But keep in mind that you're listening to somebody who's very worried about protecting the credibility of the heterodoxy. And we're going to have to confront the fact that our audiences want us to do things that are not safe, not good, because of the fact that they want a Schelling point, which either says the man is right or the man is trying to stick it to us. And neither of these Schelling points is viable. congratulations. You've entered the wilderness of modernity. And David, my personal opinion is you've been trying to balance this from the beginning of my relationship with you. And it's one of the reasons that this is the first podcast that I'm talking about this on, because I know that you've been seeing this coming for quite some time. And now we have the pandemic to show that both you and I have been right to be concerned about this.